when you take behavioral science, you are actually developing a concept in biology, in psychology, in economics, in policy making, and you have to be actually a good data analyst. And that opened up like a huge industry opportunity as well.
So is there any other thing that you feel like you should have known when you were starting out your career?
I feel like I should have had like better communication skills, especially with non-specialist audience. So now also when I speak, I bring in like a lot of technical terms, which I have to unpack.
Welcome to another episode of The Truth in Research. Today we are privileged to be joined by Dr. Muhzina Shajid Pyari. if I'm sure I got that correctly. Okay. All right. So she's a behavioral scientist and cognitive, cognition researcher whose work explore how behavior develops, how decisions are being made, and she has insights from animal and human behavior and how they can actually help us better understand the society. So one thing I actually find very fascinating, particularly about your work is the ability for you to connect research from animal behavior, cognition. You look at some of the social interaction to broader questions and how humans think, learn, and all of that. So it's quite a pleasure to have you on the show today. And I would like you to start by introducing yourself.
Hi, right now I'm based in Europe. I moved to Europe in 2018. And I did my PhD in Hungary at Eötvös University. It's where my major behavioral science journeys. There is a huge and nice group which research on companion dogs, and I started working with them since 2018. And I was working mostly on social behavior in companion animals in a comparative perspective. And later since the start of my research, I was interested to study about human behavioral science as well. Since I got the opportunity to start with animals, my journey from there. And anyway, humans are separate from, like, we are not anything special.
Yeah, true. Behavior is something we experience every day, and yet many people don't fully understand what behavioral science is all about. And for someone listening for the first time, how would you actually explain behavioral science, and why should ordinary people care about it?
Behavioral science is something individual or an organism interact with its environment. So, being that said, environment can be individual of the species or individual of a different species, or like how we make decisions, how our affecting our decisions, or like how we regulate our decisions. So everything comes under behavior. So it's not just about how we speak or how we verbally express something. It's about how our body language is expressing what we are intent to express. Everything is behavior.
True, yeah. Because, people have this assumption that, human beings make some kind of rational decisions. I don't know if you understand about that, because our behavior is something that inculcates in how we make decisions every day. And so from what research has taught, us, how true is this assumption, that behavior is linked to rational decision making as a researcher?
In reality, our decisions are usually a blend of both. It's a mix of our emotions and rational thinking. So another misconception is that people, when someone is making a decision, we carefully weigh all available options before making a choice. Means like if an individual is given with 3 choices and multiple factors to choose that particular one of the choice, we believe, or that is not true, we believe that if an individual is choosing option A, that option A is chosen based on like weighing all the parameters. That's not the right rule. Like mostly that choices are being made in influencing on like habits, or like what society or what culture that particular individual is in, or just the it can be like what recent experiences that particular human being or like particular individual had. So everything is contributing to the decision making in a different way, not in an equally weighted way. And the other thing is, uh, uh, we usually underestimate how much context shapes an individual's decision making. Like, we tend to believe that our choices are stable preferences, which are not. A small changes in options are presented, like how we are presenting an option can actually influence a person's choice. For example, one of the latest studies, when the food options were displayed without any labels like vegan, vegetarian, non-vegetarian, people were tend to choose more vegan or non-vegetarian food than non-vegetarian food. But when it was presented with labels, people were actually avoiding vegan food or vegetarian food. Like those who eats both, people tend to avoid those options. But when it was presented without any label, there was like a significant increase in choosing the vegetarian food over non-vegetarian food. Sometimes like how we present an option can also influence someone's behavior. Like for example, in the fashion industry, if a nice person, like a very pretty person, is wearing something nice or something very bad, but how that person is carrying that outfit can make a customer to choose that particular outfit, thinking that okay, this will look good on me also. But if the same outfit is displayed without any model, like if it is just a picture with the outfit hanging on a stand or somewhere presented in a stand without a human being or a model, maybe that product cannot be consumed or bought, will not be like accepted by the customers in like how we are presenting in the other way. So how the presentations can also contribute to a choice making or decision making is well established. So it's not always about like how our rational thinking. It's the blend of everything.
True, true. That's of course, yeah. Oh, honestly, and I just like the fact that you didn't just explain it, you also applied some research to it. That really makes a lot of sense. So if I could actually ask you, you've worked on both animal and human behavior, right? So what are actually some things, surprising things you believe human beings can learn from studying animal behavior?
Actually, we usually believe like if we hear someone or a researcher saying that okay, I primarily worked with animals, we have a misconception that whatever we are studying, whatever concepts we are testing, or whatever hypothesis we are testing in animals is only applicable to animals, means non-humans. No, that's not the case always. Like my research area was primarily on social behavior, so there the major study happened like how interactions happens between two species, or how interaction happens between two same, like between the species, like how interspecies and interspecies. I don't know if I'm bringing in like too much technical terms here. Like if I talk about like dog and a human, their interaction means either the interaction can happen between a human being and a dog, or we can check the interactions between two dogs or like a pack of dogs. Okay, or we can check the interaction how a cat and a dog is interacting, or a dog and a child how they are interacting, how the emotional well-being or the cognitive development of a child is improving, or how it is affected in the presence of a dog. So everything is behavior. So there an animal is involved just doesn't mean that we cannot apply that scenario in human being. Most of the theories which we use in animal behavior is taken or inspired from what we know from human. So and vice versa.
True.
For example, now we have like a big field or area developing in animal assisted interventions, where we should know how this interaction between an animal and a human is giving positive welfare to the human being, and at the same time how it is affecting the animal. So I would say behavior is just behavior, whether we are studying it in human or in animal. So we can apply, like, if we have to, definitely we need to tweak it around. We can't apply the same, like how I ask questions or how I interpret my results in dogs. I cannot apply the same thing on humans. We have to think the context. We have to think about the context also.
True. Yes, of course, because you can't really, it's, I think it's context specific. It's context specific for you to make any of the decision. So I'm saying in today's world, we face challenges, from misinformation and a lot of things. Right, there are challenges that comes from misinformation. There are challenges that comes from unhealthy habits. Now we can actually look at it if we want to bring in the behavioral context. Now, how can behavioral science now help us solve some of these problems?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this misconceptions and how behavior, decision making is affecting it. For example,
Yeah.
when it comes to, like, if we open, I'm not like a pro or against in social media, but if we open Instagram or like any social media platform, we can see like hundreds or like millions of influencers bringing in tips on like how child behavior is developing, how we can correct a particular behavior, okay, or how a cat or a dog is showing a problem behavior. If I take an example from animal, or if I take an example from human, like how a problem behavior is shown or how we can solve it in a human child. Okay, but most of the influencers are not from behavior science background. So whatever tips they are giving or distributing is based on a very small sample size. So the tips might be useful in that particular scenario, or that can be applicable to that one particular individual, or like maybe few. But those who are listening to this particular reel or any video snaps from the social media, and people believe that this is something true because of the numbers written there, like how many people have watched it, how many likes it got, how many reach it got, how many times it has forwarded. So these numbers actually bring in a credibility to make others believe that, okay, this is something right, this is what I should adopt, or this is what I should follow to apply in my case. Okay, and that cannot end up in a good way. For example, if I see a reel showing a game, particular game being played between a parent and a child. Okay, and if I try to, for example, like that game is with colors and alphabets. Okay, some kids like colors and alphabets. Certain kids like alphabets a lot. Some kids like cars. Some kids like some other toys. It can vary. So if I'm going to do the same set of activity with a child who likes cars or an entirely different with an entirely different interest, this activity is not going to help that child. But what information is lacking in that particular scenario is we need to tweak it to make it suitable for the other individual so that it works. And then if it doesn't work, it creates a panic, thinking that, okay, this works in that particular child, but it is not working in my case. So there is something wrong. Okay. So this misinformation can lead to like some unnecessary situations which is not required, or which is like that misinformation is actually ruining someone else's life.
Of course.
Just because of the numbers, like thousands, okay, 1,000 people watched it, 2,000 people watched it, and then an expert comes in and saying, okay, this is something this is not a universal thing, so you don't have to worry about it. But that statement doesn't stand just because there is no 2,000 likes or followers in that particular page. Okay, so that number, the bigger number and the smaller number, has a huge effect on how we adopt that particular information, regarding or regardless of the expertise, who is saying it.
Yeah, truth is that I would say that in my own opinion, like I don't like using social media. Like I don't really, social media is something that can be very, very demanding, because there could be some time, whereby you just scroll around social media and all of that, and then you already look drained. Now, to talk about the information that you're getting from maybe Instagram, TikTok, and all of that, trying to consume is a lot. Is a lot. Because I do tell people that if you want to stay on your phone from morning till night, there are enough content for you. There are more than enough because there are a whole lot. So now think about the right and the wrong ones, and then what happens aftermath that consumption. It's really really a lot. Now, but let us look at it this way now. Looking at your expertise in behavioral science and your strong passion for it. I would ask now, the reason we designed this conversation now is for early career researchers, because there are people who would want to get into research. They want to know how to make impact, and they find that behavioral sciences is the path that they would like to choose. And so now let's take, for example, now there is that young Muhzina who is starting her time in research. So just picture, and the person is in an LMIC context, maybe Pakistan, Nepal, Brazil, or Africa. And now they've now seen all they are kind of faced with all the challenges and all of that. Now, what is that one advice that you're going to give to the person while they are starting their journey in research, particularly with respect to behavioral science?
Behavioral science. Okay, why I started my journey is like, okay, I did my bachelor's and master's in a research institute in India. So there we had the opportunity to try out different topics. So I started my research in diabetes, actually, with Drosophila. You know Drosophila, small insects. So I started working with Drosophila, and then I realized, okay, laboratory, like the same laboratory setting is not the place for me. I wanted to do something more. I wanted to explore more. And then I started exploring other opportunities with other species. And then I worked with butterflies. One time I worked with, most of the time I worked with Drosophila, but different questions. One time I started working with butterflies, and then I realized with this, something which is related to nature, I can actually go out and I have that opportunity to explore something new every day. And living beings comes with very fascinating questions, and every time it surprises, making us think why it is doing in this particular way. So when I was working with butterflies, my major questions were related to reproduction, or like how a male is impressing a female. So there, even though they all had the same pattern, but the patterns vary with individuals. So even if all of them are butterflies, but butterfly 1 is impressing a female in a different way than the individual bee. And then I started working with dogs. There also I saw the same pattern. Like even though they have a same pattern overall throughout the species, but there are variations. So these variations are actually affecting in a group level. Okay. So then I got into like, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to explore why, even though we all are same species, even though we all are human beings, but in a specific situation, the way I behave and the way my friend behave is different. And I wanted to know why and what factors are affecting how I think and how my friend think, why they are different. For example, if I was given a choice to go to London for 2 days, I might think whether these 2 days are enough for me to explore London, like especially for eating food, to try out everything, like local food out there. But my friend might think in 2 days, how many places I can cover. So the way my criteria to make the decision is different than how my friend think, and how their criteria are chosen, because my interests are different than my friend. So, and this interest actually shaped from my previous experiences and what type of environment I am right now in, what level is my financial status, what extra time I have, like lot of informations, lot of parameters are there to decide whether I should choose that trip or not, whether I should postpone or like do it right now. So that decision making, even though the options were given in the same way, the that picking, like, okay, option B, option A, okay, these things are good for me, so I'll choose this one. So this varies. And this experience we can only have in behavioral science. Okay. If you choose cell biology or like a cancer biology area, there you always have to be in the lab, but there your area is also limited. When you take behavioral science, you are actually developing a concept in biology, in psychology, in economics, in policy making, and you have to be actually a good data analyst. And that open up like a huge industry opportunity as well. When people think about like behavioral science or like an animal behavioral science, or people believe or see them as like, okay, a person who is training an animal. If it is an animal behavioral science, usually people think like, okay, they train an animal. Because when I started, I used to work with cats and dogs. People used to think I'm an animal trainer, which I'm not. I can do that also.
Yeah.
At the same time, I can apply the concepts which I developed or which I learned during my research in other species as well. So that, for me, that is something very interesting. I don't have to get stuck with one species. If I am interested to move on from one species to another, I have that opportunity. Or if I want to leave academia completely, and if I want to transition to industry, still I have my skill set, like data part. That is the biggest advantage for me. Because in behavioral science, data has meaning only if it is analyzed properly. Without proper analysis, there is no meaning to the data. It's just the noise. So that is a big thing. So you have expertise in multiple areas. If someone asks me like, do you have a PhD in biology? I can say yes. Do you have a PhD in psychology? Oh yeah, partially yes. Do you have a PhD? So
Yes.
it's like, yeah,
True.
from here, here, yeah.
Yes.
It's everywhere.
True. Yeah, but if I ask you, what do you wish someone had told you when you were starting out?
Sorry?
What do you wish someone had told you when you were starting out? Is there anything that you feel like you should have known this earlier in your career?
I should have known about this in my career.
Yes, yes. Is there any information you feel like somebody should have told you in your career, or maybe something you feel like, oh, this is something you would have done much more better? And because so many people who are listening to this now, hearing your story, of course, they are intrigued and they would want to, cue in, looking at you, say, explaining that, yeah, behavioral science exposes you more, to broader fields, it kind of conglomerates other fields into one, right? Now, what outside of that, is there any other thing that you feel like you should have known when you were starting out your career?
When I have started my behavioral science career, I feel like I should have had like better communication skills, especially with non-specialist audience. So now also when I speak, I bring in like a lot of technical terms which I have to unpack. So I felt like during my PhD or my research career training period, I should have put some effort or invest some time to bring in what I really study for the common people or like non-specialist audience without lot of technical terms. So I felt like that communication, what we have in the research paper, has to be translated to a new language so that everyone can enjoy what we already know. So that in one way, in a way, these misconceptions can be reduced if we have this research language translated to like some interactive language so that everyone can understand and read. So that's what I felt, or like I feel like that is something I missed from the start, and I started realizing it recently. Especially when I started to focus more on child behavior, I feel like whenever I'm conveying something to a parent or a caregiver or in a school environment, the more I bring in technical terms or like higher level of pure science words, that is not easy for everyone to understand. So if I would have invested some time in science communication, this part would have been easier now. And nobody told me about that. Because in research, we usually leave everything with the journal and then we move on. We, as a researcher, we really don't have that much time to like do everything. Otherwise, also, we are doing a lot of things and we leave this science communication part aside. And I believe we should cut down something and we should bring in more science and communication part in our work. And nobody has told me about that, how important it is.
Honestly, I must really say a very big thank you to you. And I would add that one of the missions of the Truth in Research is to strengthen research capacity in low and medium income countries in Africa. And from your perspective and from everything that you've shared, I believe this is definitely going to be very significantly impactful to individuals out there, particularly this last point that you raised, about the need for us to simplify a lot of things, because as researchers, we tend to rely so much on ambiguity, ambiguous words, trying to make it so, verbose and all of that. But I would say that I share the same sentiment with you. And honestly, Dr. Muhzina, this couple of minutes that we've just conversed right now has really been very useful. And I want to say a very big thank you for sharing your experience and insights with us today. So is there any last thing you might want to say before we call it off?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to add one more thing to the comment which I made about science communication. It's not about like complaining about. It's not about complaining about the system. It's about how we usually do the research. And when most of the time I communicate my work with the people who knows more than what I know. So we really never have to like unpack all the terminologies. We just have to, if I say cognition, I just have to keep that word there. I don't have to bring in the entire book describing cognition. But for me, the opportunities were less to communicate with the people who know lesser in this particular area than me. And that's when this necessity arises. So that's what we usually miss. And if the research has to be useful for the public, we have to communicate. And these platforms like podcast or this interviews are useful in a way. And I would like to thank you for bringing in this opportunity.
Thank you very much. And hopefully, I'm sure we'll keep our hands together. And of course, definitely we'll communicate sometime in the future. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, David. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right, yeah.